Hello, I'm Warren Go from Grade 12 STEM, and today we will talk about one of our national hero and a very famous writer in the Philippines, Jose Rizal. Background of Jose Rizal. Jose Rizal in full name, Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Realonda. Born June 19, 1861, Calamba, Philippines. Died December 30, 1896, Manila. Patriot, physician, and man of letters who was an inspiration to the Philippine nationalist movement, the son of a prosperous landowner. In 1887, Rizal published his first novel, Nalimitang Here, a passionate exposure of the evils of Spanish rule in the Philippines. A sequel, El Filibusterismo, 1891, The Reign of Greed, established his reputation as the leading spokesman of the Philippine Reform Movement. He published an annotated edition 1890 reprinted 1958 of Antonio Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, hoping to show that the native people of the Philippines had a long history before the coming of the Spaniards. He became the leader of the propaganda movement, contributing numerous articles to its newspaper, La Solidaridad, published in Barcelona. Rizal's political program included integration of the Philippines as a province of Spain, representation in the Cortes, the Spanish Parliament, the replacement of Spanish friars by Filipino priests, freedom of assembly and expression, and equality of Filipinos and Spaniards before the law. Rizal returned to the Philippines in 1892. He founded a non-violent reform society. Famous literary works of Jose Rizal: Mi Ultimo Adios, El Filibusterismo, Noli Me Tangere, to the Filipino Youth. Brief analysis of Jose Rizal's famous literary works. Mi Ultimo Adios. The knowledge and perspective that Rizal had when he wrote his final poem, Mi Ultimo Adios, are still evident today in numerous forms. His passion for the nation and the many supporters who fought for it, for the right to free speech and criticism, and still in place today. We give meaning to what Rizal and other national heroes did, just as they battled for our nation in the same way that he did while he was still alive. Rizal encourages us to be aware of the past and current events by just opening our eyes, observing what is happening, and being conscious of events we can relate to his perspective in the present. El Filibusterismo. Juan Crisostomo Ibarra, now going by the name Simon, is a wealthy jeweler. He travels the globe invisibly accumulating fortune, which he plans to use to overthrow his native country's oppressed and corrupt government. However, Simon's true motivation is revenge. He desires to avenge the passing of his father and save Maria Clara from the monastery. Basilio, a medical student, identifies Simon as the person who assisted in burying his mother Sisa under a tree over 10 years ago, while they are in a forest on Christmas Eve, to recover the diamonds he buried close to Sisa's grave. Simon is in the forest. The plotter's scheme falls apart as the movie goes on, because all the secrets and intrigues are revealed. Simon's gems are thrown by a decent Filipino priest. No Limit Tangere. The narrative on Don Crisostomo Ibarra, a young man of Filipino and Spanish heritage who spent 7 years traveling throughout Europe, is told in the novel. Ibarra returns, and now that he is mature enough to comprehend the world more fully, he observes the oppression that Spanish colonialism inflicted on the indigenous people, Ibarra finds himself up against forces who see him as a direct danger to their authority and who will do whatever it takes to maintain it, as he makes efforts to do something about it. To the Filipino youth, to honor the youth of the Philippines, Dr. Jose Rizal wrote the sonnet to the Filipino youth. He wanted the young people of the Philippines to make the most of their abilities, talents, and skills to succeed, not only for themselves but also for their own motherland, the Philippines. Dr. Jose Rizal wished for the young people of the Philippines to develop their skills and use them to aid those in need. Throughout this poem, Dr. Jose Rizal also urged the young people to develop and nurture their artistic abilities, revitalize and solidify their scientific knowledge, and continue their chain of obedience. Comments of other people in Jose Rizal's work. Comment of Melissa in Mi Ultimo Adios. Mi Ultimo Adios, My Last Farewell is a 14th stanza poetry and is a required reading material in schools. Unfortunately, during youthful times, my immediate concern was to get a passing grade for it and not ponder on its meaning. Reading it again now strikes a chord of nationalism and evokes high admiration for the person who wrote it. With his imminent death looming heavily, it is a wonder he could still compose this piece. This poetry contains Rizal's mournful valediction during the eve before his execution. El Filibusterismo. Comment of Edma Hanna Payumo. El Filibusterismo is the second novel written by Philippine national hero Jose Rizal. It also serves as a sequel to his Noli Me Tangere. El Filibusterismo is, is a political novel full of bitterness, sorrow, pain, violence, and vengeance to awaken the Filipino people against the abusive masters. It bore an irresistible urge to revolution among the Filipino to go against the government and the practices of the church, which appeared realistic. The story is still a tribute to our country. It clearly depicts the oppression that we suffer, for all intent and purposes. This is still one of the greatest works of literature that ever came out of our country. Noli Me Tangere, comment of Umber Clarice. This novel has a lot of symbolism and real-life events that opened the eyes of the Filipino people during the Spanish colonization to start the revolution and overthrow the Spanish colonizers. Every character in Noli Me Tangere has a role that depicts different roles in Philippine society to fight for the freedom of the country. Jose Rizal represented his persona as Crisostomo Ibarra, who was a rich character yet he was rebellious who fought for the freedom of the Spaniards, while Elias, who was poor and oppressed by the Spaniards, but he sacrificed his life so that Crisostomo can escape, because he believed that Crisostomo has a better chance to fight against the Spaniards. Elias' sacrifice paved the way to Crisostomo Ibarra's revenge against the Spaniards in the sequel of the novel El Filibusterismo. To the Filipino youth, comment of Lester A. Abion. Undoubtedly, just like the other poems of our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal, the poem to the Filipino youth is a masterpiece worth reading and comprehending for. If I were to base my judgment, I can personally describe it as a real poem. That is something that beautifully incorporated the essence elements of poetry. While I was examining its every line, I was really captured and amazed with the manner of writing, the message it tries to stress and insist, and of course with the most sincerity and genuineness of the poem. These things made me feel more eager and interested to continue reading Jose Rizal's. These aspects were the principal strengths of the poem. reasoning why my attention and time was wholeheartedly and heavily caught throughout this poem.